All right, in this video, we're going to cover a bunch of different subjects, but I'm going to start with just cleaning up and organizing a little bit. In the next video, we'll probably start doing all the trim and the chrome pieces and stuff. So we're eventually going to start accumulating a lot of like little pieces, little parts. So it's really important that we start to get organized here. So I want to organize my scene in a way that makes sense, and a lot of this stuff as well I'm going to start combining up. So actually, why don't we start with that before we get into organizing into groups? Let's start with how to combine together our two sides, and then we'll start organizing things in groups. So you only want to do this, you only want to get to this point when there's no other changes that I need to make, right? For example, like my hood is pretty much the final hood. A lot of these things, the only thing that I would say is probably not finalized here is this part here, because we still need to make the gas cap, and I will probably add in the seam that goes through here as well. But we still have functions, like we still have our symmetry function, and we can always duplicate, we can always delete and duplicate things back over. But for the sake of just staying organized, I want to start joining things together and combining things together and so on. So let's start with something easy like the fender here. So what I'm going to do with both of these selected, if we just do a mesh combine, it's going to give us an error. So it's going to say polyunite needs at least two objects. So because I have things in groups like this, because I'm duplicating these groups, it's not recognizing these individual groups as different objects. So what I can do is I can select one of my instance groups. So here's my instance group here. And I should be able to go to modify convert. And then somewhere in here we should see instance to object. So we'll go modify convert instance to object. And that should make it where these are actually two different objects, right? So let's so let's one at a time. I'm just going to grab these and like these two here, and we'll do mesh combine. And the way that I'm going to do this, we'll jump into the front view. And obviously, I'm only going to be doing this to objects that meet in the middle. So like, for example, these pieces aren't going to get combined together because they don't meet in the middle. But what we're going to do is combine them together and then go to our vertex mode and select all the verts right down the center and scale them in. So I'm just going to scale them in until they don't scale in anymore. And then we go to edit mesh merge, and then we'll merge those together. And then we just look at it in perspective view to double check that everything looks merged together, right? And so for that case, everything looks good. And then we're just going to do that to everything, right? So I'm going to do that to our bumper here. So I'm going to go ahead and do mesh combine on those guys. And some of these things we can do just from our perspective view. So I'll do that, select those center verts, scale them in until they don't scale in anymore. And all that's doing is just putting those verts right on top of each other. So now when I do edit mesh merge, it just merges them together. And you can see when you start doing that, that your center seam will go away, or it will round out. So there may be some cases like right here where we want to come in and add another little edge loop to this, so we maintain that crease there. So in a situation like this, I'm just going to hit it with a bevel and do two segments so I get that center line, and then we can kind of just move those together. That way when we smooth it, we still get that sort of peak in the center like that, which we want. And yeah, so I'm just going to go from front to back and do this all the way down to everything, right? That needs to be joined in the center. So I'm going to do that. We'll just do that in a really quick time lapse. And then we'll get back to other topics that we can discuss. All right, so now we have everything combined together for the most part. And again, this isn't a final stage, right? So we can always separate things out. We can always make changes. We can always duplicate them back over. So it's not like you have to worry about, once you do this step, it's not like you can't back up and make changes to anything. This is just a point in the process where we're going to be getting a lot of objects. So I want to try to stay really organized. So I want to organize things in a way that makes sense, right? So the other thing that I want to combine here are these two objects. Now, for these two, there's actually an overlapping one in the center. So whenever I click on these two, you'll see the center one. There's like an overlapping one there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to face mode. I'm going to select all the faces of that one and just delete it. That way, now when I combine these together, I don't have like an overlapping piece. But I do want to combine these together. And just doing mesh combine. I don't need to merge the verts or anything like we did before. But I do want to combine these together and put these in a group, a specific group. So yeah, I think I have everything organized here. So the groups that I like to sort of start organizing things in, I basically separate things based on material. This will just make it easier to, it'll be easier to do the UVs. It'll be easier to assign materials to things. So it'll be easier to create an ID map, which we can then take into Substance Painter. So I like to organize my groups at this stage by material. Now, that doesn't mean at some point I may reorganize my groups to make rigging or something like that more effective. But for now, I want to organize my groups based off of material. So I think the best way to approach this is just to take I'm going to leave this group here, the small parts group, and I'm actually going to change the name of this to Chrome parts. And this is the one group that I'm going to leave. I'm not going to touch this group because it's already fairly organized. We have antenna, tail light, handle, and our side view mirror. So this group's already fairly organized, but I do want to start throwing other Chrome parts into that group as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just select everything else that's going to be made out of Chrome here, which is basically for now just my 2 bumpers. So I'm going to select all those guys. And let's go ahead and just group these together. So I'm going to do Control G to throw those all in a group together. And I'm just going to name those bumpers. And we'll put those, we'll put that in our Chrome parts group. All right, so then we can just select all of our Chrome parts at once. One more, this is a Chrome part as well. So let's go ahead and change the name of this to grill. I'm going to change this to grill frame and throw that into Chrome parts as well. This one I would, trying to think here. This one I'm going to name this grill mesh or just something like that. And I'm going to put this in a group. So with that selected, I'm just going to Control G this into a group and call this group unsmooth. So anything I'm planning to keep unsmoothed, I'll put into this group. It's probably just going to be this piece, but I think it's still useful to have this in a group by itself. So I have an unsmooth group, I have a Chrome parts group. Let's make a car paint group. So I'm just, with nothing selected, I'm going to hit Control G, which will create a null, which is basically an empty group. And then I'm going to change the name of this to car paint. And then as I bring things into this car paint group, I want to rename them. So I'm going to name this front fender. Let's just go through and name all of these. Hood. We'll name this one hood vent. That's the windshield. Let's just name this rear. Rear. I'm trying to think of a better name for this. Let's name it rear cab. Yeah, let's name it rear cab. And then we have hatchback. So I'm going to name this one hatchback. And it's the window, and then rear fender. And then we'll put all of these in our car paint. So this is everything that's going to get a car paint material. We have a few more that we haven't named yet that we're going to go in this group. So let's expand. We have a lot of empty group nodes here. So that means, what does that mean? It's time to delete the history. So we can delete history and get rid of a lot of those empty group nodes. A lot of them are still there. But I think that got rid of most of them. Let's take all of these pieces here and group these together. So I'm going to grab all of these guys and group these, Control G, and we'll call this group reflector frames. And I will put that in our car paint. And then let's see, we have bottom. Let's name this. This is the left side of our car, so I'm going to name this L. L door or L bottom door. We'll name this L side fender. L headlight. The headlight is one thing that I still need to do some work on. If you look really closely at our reference, which I don't have up right now, there's some little holes and things in here. So I will need to do some more work and mirror over our headlight. But for now, I'm just going to kind of go with what we have. L underscore door. And what is this? What is this piece? Oh, that's the little sphere that we don't need anymore, so we can get rid of that guy. It's funny that that was still in there. And then we can take all of these and throw them into middle mouse, drag those into car paint. And then we can come over here to this group. Let's go ahead and I think all of these are empty group nodes. So I want to just take everything out of groups. So let's try to just pull everything out of groups or already existing groups. And if you select a group, like I select this group, but I don't see it, I don't see anything being selected, we should be able to just delete that entire group. Just want to double check that I didn't accidentally delete something. We can also probably do, let's try going to edit, ungroup. Yeah, so that works as well. And then again, I'm going to select everything and delete history. And that should get rid of a lot of these empty group nodes. But if not, we should be able to just select them all and delete them. Let's make a glass group as well. So I'm just make another null and name this glass. And then I can just select all of my glass surfaces here. And we'll put those in our glass group. And let's name some of these other things. I'm also going to make a temp group. So again, with nothing selected, I'm going to do Control G and we'll name this temp. So this is just temporary items like our wheels that we have here. And in this case, my headlights here are also very temporary. So I'm going to throw all of those. Not even going to bother naming those because they are temporary, but I'm going to throw all of those in my temp group. And then we'll make a, let's make a plastic group. So I'm going to, once again, Control G, and we'll name this one plastic. And that's probably just going to be these two small headlights. So let's name these two left. Let's name it a fog light. So I'll name this one left fog light. And right. Probably could have just done R, but that's all right. These changes, these names may change at some point. And we're going to put those both in our plastic group. You can see that when I first started, it was like a lot of different things, right? And it seems overwhelming. it's about to get even more overwhelming. So I want to stress the importance of this part, right? I want to stress how important it is to organize things now, because as complicated as things are, they're about to get a lot more complicated when we start doing a lot of these smaller pieces and parts. So yeah, I can't stress enough how important it is to start organizing now. What is this guy? Oh, that's another sphere, so we can get rid of that. And then we can start naming these. So this is going to be our door, our headlight, our side fender, and our door. I think I called this bottom door. Okay, so then we can put these in car paint. If you happen to have a lot of extra sets here, you should be able, just don't delete your default object set, but these other sets, we can just go ahead and delete those for now, just to keep our scene clean. And yeah, so just try to get to a point where you have everything in specific groups. Like I have an unsmooth group, I have chrome parts, car paint, glass, temp, and plastic. And I'm probably going to need a rubber group too. So let's go ahead and Control G. And I'm going to name this black rubber. So for all my black pieces. So for the plastic, I'll probably put other objects in there too, like the reflectors and the this guy right here. But for the black rubber, I think the only thing I have for black rubber is currently my antenna base right here. I'm going to leave that for now, but we will need a black rubber group because there's a lot of black rubber and plastic here. So, and then let's go ahead and hit Control S to save. And yeah, so now we have our scene very nice and organized into different groups. And again, if I need to make a change, it's not the end of the world. I should be able, it should be just a matter of, like, for example, if I want to change something about my headlight here, I can go in and model something into it. And then if I want to duplicate it back over, all I need to do is just delete the one I want to get rid of. And now I can select this one and use our same hotkey that we've been using, because the pivot point for this should still be in the center of the grid. So I can use our same hotkey, Control Shift D, and that will make an instance, copy an instance of it over. Now this is an instance, so that's something that you want to keep in mind. You may want to do, instead of doing Control Shift D, which will copy an instance, the other thing you can do is just Control D, which will just duplicate it. Control D to duplicate. And then I can come over to my channel box here and just do a -1 scale in X. And that will also just move it over to the other side. So, okay, so we've organized our scenes. We've organized all of our objects. We've kind of placed them where we want them to be. I'm going to make my tires here a little bit bigger. And I'm going to Control D to duplicate them and just move them over to the other side. Right, and then those should stay, you know, because they were in the group. They're going to stay in our temp group, right? So we have a temp group that anything that we can just throw in there as a proxy, right? It's not a final piece. We can just throw it in our temp group. This also makes it a lot easier to hide things as you go, right? So like say, for example, I start working on the interior of the model. I can just Control H to hide the exterior and then Shift H to bring it back. So this just makes it a lot easier to work with. Again, you know, I can't stress enough how important organization is at this point. I know it's something that you're gonna think, oh, I don't have to worry about that. I'm not gonna pay attention to that, right? That's because that's the way that I thought whenever I first started learning how to 3D model is organization. Oh, it's not that important. And while there might be a shred of truth to that it's not that important, it will save you a ton of time, right? It may not be important for the overall outcome and look of the project, but it just saves you so much time if you stay organized. So you're not looking for, if you have to find a specific model or part, you're not looking for something that's named Polysurface 356, right? You know exactly where it's at. You stayed organized, right? So while it may seem like, you know, something that's not completely necessary, trust me, it's just going to save you a ton of time if you go through and organize your scene like this. All right, so now that that's out of the way, let's talk about doing some cool renders to this. So we're at a point in our project where we've gotten quite a lot done, right? And we may want to upload this to our socials. We may want to show our friends, hey, this is what I'm working on. And you may be at a point where you want to do some nice, cool looking renders of just what you're doing at the moment, right? So let's talk about how to set up a really easy render setup to get some really nice looking renders as like progress renders, right? We're not done with this yet, so this isn't going to be a final render, but this is a way where we can do some really nice just sort of progress scene renders. So and we can also put all this stuff in a group too, so we can kind of hide it, get rid of it if we need to. All right, so now that we have everything organized, let's get a nice sort of progress render for our socials, right? So I'm going to make a cube, make a really big cube, and I'm going to delete everything except for the back and the bottom like this. And I'm going to make the I'm going to move my pivot point for this down to be sort of even with that, so I can scale it up all the way up like this. And then currently my normals are facing the wrong direction, so I'm going to go to Mesh Display Reverse. And I'm going to take this edge and I'm going to do a bevel. Like that, so we get a nice backdrop element for our model. Now I like to bring this up just above the tires, right? So just kind of go above the tires a little bit like that. And then we have a nice backdrop element for our car. Now let's set our render preset here to HD 1080. So something like that in our render settings. And I just want to go in and make sure that, let's get rid of this because I'll show you how to add this back in, but for now we're going to remove that. And just trying to get this to default settings. So currently everything is default. Okay, so another thing that I like to turn on here in your viewport, this is your resolution gate. I like turning that on because that will basically frame it up in the way that we're going to see the render, right? So this will show us the render of everything, right? So the next thing we want to do is bring a light into our scene, and I think best results in the quickest way is to bring in a sky dome. So I'm going to go to our Arnold menu, and we're going to bring in a sky dome light, right? Just like that. And if you want to scale it up, make it bigger, we can. So then I'm going to bring open my render window, and we're just going to do a quick render here. Just as it is, nothing has been done to it, except for putting the backdrop in and the sky dome. Right, and I'm going to just save this one with our little camera button here, just so we have something to compare it to later. So the next thing I want to do is get a little bit more interesting lighting in our scene. And let's go ahead and rename this piece here to backdrop. And for my sky dome, I want to bring in a more interesting environment to apply to our sky dome so we get a little bit better lighting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a little trick where I use something from Adobe Substance Painter. So if you have Adobe Substance Painter installed, this will work. If you don't have it installed, you're probably going to need to find an HDRI sky dome image from somewhere else and use it from somewhere else. You should be able to just Google something like HDRI probe and find lots of different options. But we're going to use something that comes with Substance Painter. So if you have Substance Painter installed already, this should be pretty easy to do. So I'm going to go to my color for my sky dome. I'm going to click on the checker box here, and we're going to assign a file node. And in the file we're going to assign, we're going to have to locate it through our Adobe Substance Painter files. So I'm going to click the folder, and we're going to go to our C drive. This may seem complicated to find, but once you figure out where these things are, it gets really easy to locate them and just find them really quickly. But we're going to go to our C drive, program files, which is here. And then we're going to go to Adobe Substance 3D Painter, resources, starter assets, and then environments. You can see the path right up here. May be different for you, but this is what it is on my computer. And then I personally like the studio environments, and I like to go with Tomoko. So there's some other ones you can play around with here. There's one specifically for automotive too, but I like this Tomoko one the best. I like Tomoko and Studio 3. The one with just the 3 lights here, and Tomoko. Those are the ones I like to use. I'm going to use Tomoko and just hit open. And then if I re-render this now, we're going to get a nice dynamic looking lighting, right? So it's going to be darker. It'll look a little bit nicer. And now what I can do, I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. And I'm just going to grab my sky dome here. I'm going to turn on my IPR render, which is interactive render. Right here, the little play button. And as that's IPR rendering, I'm going to rotate my sky dome around until I get the lighting scenario that I like, right? So probably something like this. And we'll let that finish rendering just so we can compare the two. Okay, so this is with just basic flat lighting, and then this is with our HDRI image applied. So much more dynamic lighting. And you can get a lot of different sort of lighting scenarios with this just by rotating this around. Right, until you find something that you like. I kind of like having some shadows. All right, so maybe something like that. I like that highlight that we have on our headlight there. Right, so there's a few different lighting scenarios there. Now we can kick this up a notch again by adding some materials to our object or to our model. So I'm going to select my entire model except for my backdrop. So I just have everything here, and I'm going to assign a new material. So I'm going to right click, assign favorite material, and I'm going to assign a new open PBR material. And I'm going to name this material plastic. So just we'll name it to plastic PBR surface. And I'm going to go to presets, and we're going to choose plastic. And this will give us like this default blue plastic material on our car, which is fine. I'll show you how to change the color here in a second, but let's do another little render of what this looks like with the plastic. So I like plastic. It just gives us a nice base that we can just put on everything. It'll give you a nice little progress shot of your work in progress, right? So if you want to post whip shots to Discord or ArtStation or wherever you want to post your work, I think as you're working, this kind of also kind of keeps me motivated to keep working on a project too, like doing these little nice looking progress shots as I'm working. I think it's fun. It adds a little bit of fun to the project. But we can continue to kind of kick this up a little bit more. We can change the color of this if we want. So we can just come to our material here and say I can change the color to like an orange color if I want. If you do this, if you want to change the color away from that blue, I would recommend changing it here in the base color, but also coming down to subsurface and changing it here as well. Right, because plastic does have a bit of a subsurface scattering on it. So just make sure you change your colors in your base color and your subsurface. I don't think transmission has anything. So yeah. And then we're going to get more of like a color, an orangish color. Right. You can even, if you have IPR on, we can interactively kind of change the hue and look of our model. Right. I like something like that. Right. Now our shot's a little grainy. So the other thing that we can do here is we can up our sample. So let's go to our Arnold renderer and our camera AAs. I'm going to up my samples to something like 4 or 5, just a little bit. For now, again, this isn't a final render. This is just like a progress shot that I want to do, right? So I'm just going to up my camera AAs, and I'm going to come down here to imagers, and I'm going to add a optics denoiser. This is a NVIDIA denoiser, so this will just kind of get rid of a lot of that noise effect that we have in our. You have to kind of be careful with this sometimes because it will blur your image. But for something like this that's just all one color and we just want a nice progress shot, I'm going to add an optics denoiser. Let's close that and let's watch it re-render and give us a nice, clean, smooth looking render. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop that because there's one more little thing that I want to do to this before it finishes rendering. I'm going to add another material to my backdrop here. So I'm going to go to assign new favorite open PBR material. And I'm just going to use the defaults for it, but I'm going to make it a little bit darker. And let's do this while we have IPR on. A little bit darker, and I'm going to drop the roughness so we can start to get a little bit of a reflection. Right, so we see a little bit of the car reflecting there. I'm also going to smooth that surface. All right, the other thing I want to do is let's jump into our front view here. I'm going to make my tires a little bit bigger. And we're going to duplicate them over to the other side. And because we've organized, these will stay in that temp group, right? So these tires are staying in that temp group there. And then I'm just going to move my ground down a little bit. And I'm going to move it off to the side here because I'm going to use this for our thumbnails for the YouTube videos. So move it off over here a little bit so I have room for my number. And let's go ahead and do a render. And again, this is just a fun way to kind of do progress shots as you're working. I actually want to, once again, I'm going to cancel this because I want to tweak this a little bit more. I want to blur the backdrop a little bit more. So let's go to that material. And let's increase the roughness a little bit. So I want to see a little bit of a reflection there, but I don't want it to be like a mirror reflection. So maybe something like this. Let's move it down a little bit more. And let's move the backdrop over. You can even rotate the backdrop a little bit if you want, like that. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'll let that finish rendering. So yeah, this kind of just keeps you enthusiastic to work on it. It gives you a nice presentation to share with others. This is what I'm working on. Any feedback, advice. You can also include a wireframe if you want. I'll show you guys how to do a wireframe render at some point. But this just gives you a really nice render that you can share on social media just to kind of keep the enthusiasm for the project kind of built up. So I'm just then going to go to save image, and I'm just going to save this on my desktop. And I'm going to name this Pinto thumbnail. Save. And then it'll probably be the thumbnail for this particular video. So now you know how I made that, that thumbnail. All right, so in the next video, we'll jump into doing all the trim. I also want to point out that one thing that you can do here is I'm just going to take both my backdrop and my sky dome and Control G to group those together. And I'm just going to name this lighting, and we can hide it, right? So if I want to get back to work, I can just Control H to hide that. I can select everything, and I can reassign my original car matte material, and we can get back to work, right? And at any point, I can just reassign my plastic PBR surface material, unhide my backdrop, and I can do another render. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.